How to make raised panel doors in your garage. First thing what I did was I ripped down the pine to the width that I needed for the stiles and the rails, which in this case was 2 1/4. So I did a few rips on the table saw. And the reason why we're using pine is because that's what the existing kitchen had. We're just matching a door to existing doors. Normally we use maple, poplar, or any hardwood that the customer requests or which we recommend. But in this case, it's going to be a full pine door. And as you can tell in the background, we have other doors in the process. Those were made out of maple. They're in the priming stage. We were just going over details. And it's nice to rip extra pieces of, stile and rail lumber that you may need, especially for the testing phase, which is the channeling on the router tables, because sometimes you have to do it quite a few times. And those were the measurements that we were using. The height were 22 1/4 or 22 1/2, I believe, for all of them. And the widths on one was 19 1/2 and the other one was 18 1/2. But I'll show you how I subtracted here in a second. But first step would be to just cut the heights, which were the 22 1/2. And the reason why you don't want to cut the horizontal pieces is because you can't cut them until you have the panel channeling ran through the height pieces, which are the vertical ones. So once you have those pieces cut out with the channels for the male and female, you'll see in a bit how much easier it is, especially if you're using new blades or router bits, which we did in this case. We normally just do shaker doors, but the customer requested, a certain groove on the raised panel doors. I don't know if you caught it, but it has like a circular groove on the inside of all these pieces that we're cutting right now. So this is the panel channeling that we're doing, and that's a regular shaker bit that we're working with, and it helps to have some sort of support on your pieces so that they stay flat the entire time. So I built this jig to just kind of help guide it through the whole way. That way you don't want to put your fingers in there. You can tell the channel it creates right there. That channel is about 7/16 to a ½ inch, so it's within the 16th. And that's basically what we have to subtract in order to get the measurements for the inner pieces. And here I'm showing you the different router bits that I was using for the regular shaker to what we will be using with the new groove panels. So to create the groove, they also sound like a male and a female pack. And normally they work with other shaker kits, but my shaker router bits were a different brand, so they were not compatible. So what I actually had to do, I didn't show it because it was very tedious, it took a long time, was that I had to custom fit all the blades to make this work. And my janks on my router bits, they were not tall enough, so I had to disassemble and assemble honestly quite a few times. But just for the purpose of the video, I cut all that out And so next time that I do these, I will go buy a taller shank for the router bits, just a empty one, a blank one. That way I can just build whatever I need and just run these one time. Because I honestly had to do this 2 times because I ran these horizontal male channels on my first pieces, and turned out that the groove needed extra wood on them to make it work. So I had to recut some more pieces, and this is what I'm doing now. That's why I kind of went back to it. But like I was saying, it's nice to have the tall shanks for the router bits. That way you can just customize whatever door profile you're cutting, and it's not that complicated because you only have to do it once. You know, if you have enough router shanks and router bits, you could just leave them built as you need them. And in this case, I kind of wish I did because the customer actually requested more of these doors. But I needed more router bit shanks, so that's what I'll be getting next. So here I'm still running the channels with the profile. It's just hard to tell, but that red tip you see on the router bit, that's actually the groove profile. Kind of goes out of focus for a little bit, but these are the final pieces. And yeah, I mean, these router tables you can find pretty much at any hardware store. We just built little benches just to make them higher. And the next step is going to be cutting out the panels for the inside. So once you have all the vertical and horizontal pieces, we got our large pine sheets. Got them cut down to width on the table saw, and I'm marking the lengths now. Just make sure your pieces stay flat to prevent any kickback. I'm telling you that from experience. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people like to order these doors, but you know, once you do a couple of these, they get pretty easy. Regular, you know, woodworking tools. So here I'm setting up the raised panel bits for the router. This was probably the trickiest component to assemble, just because we had to take everything apart, and they made it so perfectly that it just barely fits into the guard of the router that's being held under the table here. So I thought I could fit it in there by removing these wood guards, and I tried to fit it in a few times, to be honest, but well, I tried once and it didn't go through. So that's when I realized that I had to um, come up with something else to kind of push the wood away from the guard, at least to the past the center point of the entire drill bit or the router bit, to give us that space, to give us that profile. This was an 1.5-inch raised panel profile, and it came with 2 blades, that large red blade at the bottom, and then like a 1/2 inch round blade at the top that you could hardly see. It kind of creates a groove on the back of the panel so that it slides in easy. And here I have the wood blocks that I first proposed. I think I did do a trial run, but it wasn't so nice, so I ended up looking for some 2x4s. So yeah, here's where I successfully have the whole router bit set up at the proper height. As you can tell, the red blade is basically almost flush with the router table on the edges. Because this material right here was only about 1/2 inch to 5/8 thick. It's regular, pine panels that you find at Home Depot. Yeah, this was very 5/8 heavy, possibly even 3/4 to be honest. And there's that back groove router bit that you see in action at the top. So I'm cutting the faces down on these. Next came time to assemble them. I made sure that I put glue in every single, joint piece at the vertical and the rails of the wood components. We're not gluing the panels. They say to leave the panels loose to kind of give it, expansion movement. I guess due to humidity. And here I'm clamping them down with some large 48-inch bar clamps that we purchased locally as well. We make sure that the adhesive is on there very, very nice across, and that our pieces are flush at the sides, the tops, the bottoms. Wipe out any excess glue because these doors are going to be stained. Use a different angle. But it's just me putting glue on all the joint pieces. It was a tight fit for the panel, which is nice, but it wasn't so tight that you heard any cracking or anything or popping. That'd be bad. But yeah, they fit pretty standard. Pretty much most door making router bits, they're very standard with the sizing. And I was honestly very lucky that these worked because, like I said, they were from 2 different brands. But I was able to, take them apart and put them together however I needed them. Which is what I would recommend, if you're gonna start doing these type of doors. Try to use the same brands. And I'm using 5/8 18 gauge nails on the back side of the doors that will be wood putting. Check it out. These are the results. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Appreciate it.